I know. We all want to go outside, but we're not going outside because it's cold. So we'll spend some time in here instead, warming up. Oddly enough, probably the most popular video I ever released. Not popular in terms of views, but in terms of just how well received it was by viewers and how often people refer to it as being the best piece of work I've ever done. It was this video, A Long Hot Day Parging with Pocket. And maybe what gives it its charm was that I was pretty candid in it, and its style, its delivery was completely genuine and without any sort of pretense. So I'll try to recapture a little bit of that here. I do it occasionally, but usually they don't see the light of day. They end up in the filter box with the dozens and dozens of those other unrehearsed, unscripted videos that, well, I just don't see fit to publish. But I'll try to push through it in this case, and I'll try to post this even though I don't normally do that. So, flying by the seat of my pants, what am I doing today? I just burned a bucket of chestnut burrs. These are the chestnuts I got out of it, which makes it totally not worth the trouble of owning a chestnut tree, especially because I don't even like chestnuts. The whole thing is filled with chestnut burrs. Also known as a bucket of worthless pricks. Few things in life you'll encounter that are more pointy and disagreeable than these things. Arguably, a porcupine quill is worse. Also, a cholla cactus, probably a little bit worse. But for the most part, these things can be considered about the most unpleasant and unnecessarily awful things you'll ever encounter in life. They're by and large worthless. If you go through the whole bucket, you'll get maybe somewhere between 2 and 5 chestnuts on a good year. And even then, you still have to gather, prepare, cure, and roast the chestnut, because in its natural form, it just tastes like a piece of rubber, flavorless rubber. And once roasted, it's still not that good. So when I say it's worthless as a bucket of chestnut burrs, that's pretty low value. Not much can tolerate the presence of these things. Video-wise, I'm amidst a bunch of them. I just messed this one up terribly. It's about sawhorses. Not that there's anything wrong with this sawhorse exactly, but in the video I made a prototype sawhorse, and it was a great video, really it was, for squeezing out the essence of it. Really solid video, has a lot of helpful tricks in it, tips, geometry lessons, useful stuff to you would-be home carpenters. And I made a terrible mistake in it. These sawhorses are 18 degrees, and I filmed the whole thing, this prototype sawhorse, under the impression that it was a 15-degree sawhorse. Ouch. So it goes into that box of hours and hours and hours of other video footage. I just can't release it. It was kind of heartbreaking because it was a really solid video in a lot of ways. Will I reshoot it? Maybe. What's the crux of the video? First, the elephant in the room. Yeah, it's just a pool noodle. It's a great idea. If you haven't done it, do it. I don't know why nobody ever made a video about it. Pool noodle horses are awesome. But this video was more about making a super elegant sawhorse that was just material efficient, and so that it would stack this way. I'll return to it, I promise, but not right now. Other diversions, I'm in the middle of, or rather I'm at the tail end of my second mini split. I put another mini split in for the upstairs, but this mini split is for the basement. And all I have left to do is add these 2 final pieces and flare them, and then the vacuum test, and then it's ready to go. So let me say that it's 90% done. I don't really want to talk about mini splits though. It's kind of boring, tedious. It's tough. It's worth doing for the DIYer, but just because, you know, an install can be $4,000 plus, and I have 2 of them. So both units said and done were under $2,000, and that's a considerable home upgrade, and it really, really reduces the cost of heating fuel. So depending on where you live and what type of climate control your house has, a mini split can be a really cost-effective solution. There is kind of a heavy buy-in because you got to get some specialty tools like this flaring thing. You can't even do this without a pretty high-end flaring machine, so you'll need one of those, and you need a vacuum pump, and you need some gauges. So you have a couple $100s of equipment that you have to buy before you can even do this, but once you've made the investment, the second mini split kind of becomes a no-brainer. Now I want to put a third one in here, but not today. Other projects. Oh boy, it took a while. I built a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf out of this material. 3/4 inch plywood, 7-ply plywood, the good stuff. Make sure you get 7-ply. It doesn't have the thin, useless laminate on the top either. It was painted on both sides with $50 a gallon paint, nice enamel white. And no, it's not AC plywood, even though it looks like AC plywood. It was actually CDX that was really in good shape. Every once in a while, they'll get a shipment in of this stuff, and it rivals AC plywood. And so you get it for nearly half the price. So when they got the shipment in, I used the opportunity. I bought a big pile of it, a whole bunch of sheets of this stuff, and filled it all in with wood filler where applicable, painted the crap out of it, and there it was. I made tons of these. Well, there are 2 shelves, one's 6 inches wide and one's 11 inches wide, and it's floor to ceiling. Later on, I'll insert a brief clip of it here. Still not done. Requires some woodwork like this. But I don't want to focus on that today because it's a distraction, and I'm really prone for distractions. So what am I burning here? 2 things: maple and beech. We have lots and lots of beech. So I'm trying to get rid of the beech because the maple is maple's just a nicer fuel. It's the best of everything I've burned. Hands down, maple is the best. Beech is pretty dense and it does burn hot, but it's heavy. It's harder to split for kindling, and it's just in general less pleasant. It would be a nice wood for, well, building something that you want to be heavy. But honestly, I use maple for everything that I can now. I find since there are so many maple trees here, I use it for virtually everything. In fact, let's go take a look at the jointer. It's a mess because I'm amidst, mini split and shelving and all these other projects. For lack of a better place, I stuck the jointer here, and it's been working lovely. Like, the machine is a pleasure to use. Oh, I like to put the blade in that position when I'm not using it. That way, if you do touch it, you don't get cut. It's a dangerous machine, I suppose, but this thing purrs like a kitten, and it's not even very loud, so it's surprisingly not that intimidating to operate. I wish I had a more permanent place for it. It does not belong back here, but, life. You just pile your problems on top of other problems, and so go the days of it. Why so many chainsaws? A lot of them are MS-170s. I really like those. It's now discontinued, and I bought a couple extras because I use them for milling. Milling, I don't usually talk about that, but that's how I store my and air dry my lumber between seasons. I didn't get to mill a log this year. I had a couple beauties and I ended up just turning them into firewood. I also procrastinated because I wanted to use the opportunity to make another milling video. Those do really well and they help a lot of people, and if I'm willing to pat myself on the back, it's also the best DIY mill out there on the interwebs right now, because most of the stuff out there is just nonsense. At this point, people are just filming whatever wild claim they want, and nobody's cross-checking any of the information, so there's a lot of bad information out there. But everything I put into the chainsaw milling videos, it really stands. I really crack down on it critically and make sure that there's nothing misleading or false in there. I really do produce beautiful boards. That's a prototype game. Another distraction we're not going to touch. But I'm just producing them hand over fist, and they're turning out beautifully. Look, they're hardly even splitting with my drying method. So, except for, in the pith in the center of there, you get the middles will do a little bit of checking. But look at this board. Not even any checking on the ends. Now they're painted, but look at this. It's like 2 1/4, I think, if I remember correctly. Yes, they're all numbered. Everything's meticulous. They're milled and stacked in the order that they came, and that way when you ratchet bind them back together, as far as the individual boards know, the stresses that are on them, they feel as though they're still part of the same log they were always a part of. And so they retain that original position. You do it up on blocks, spaces in between stacks, and there it is. I put a piece of plywood up here that has a space under it, and then I use it as a temporary table, and it just stays like this all year. Next year, hopefully, I'll try to get to it early in the season. I'll make the next milling video, and then this pile will go over into vertical stacks, at which time this will get replaced with a fresh new load. You're looking around and you have questions about what's in here, but I can't read your mind. I don't know what it is that you want to see, so I'll just talk about things randomly. This is for sheet goods, like, acrylic glass. There's all sorts of different types of fragiles and glasses and weird stuff like cork, foam, plastic, whatever. It's been pretty handy, I have to say. Like, keeping it vertically like that gives you access to it to whatever I want. There's a couple partitions to keep it, to keep them separated by size, and PVC to keep them dry. I am definitely happy with this system. It's just made out of 1/2-inch plywood, and what is it? Probably 32 inches deep, I would say. So you can access it from either side. This is my old bookshelf. It doesn't belong here, but we didn't get around to moving it yet. But yeah, sheet goods can be accessed from either side. It's been a lovely system. If you've just been taking your sheet goods and piling them up against the wall, you have to stop doing that. It's not sustainable in the long term. Look at these. Okay, labeled. Oh, how good is that, right? They're removable. So they have a simple tongue, no slide hardware. Here's how it's constructed. again with 1/2" plywood, and the bottom of the drawer, this is hardboard in this case, goes right into that cut. So you'll make one center wall and then just attach pieces of 1/2" plywood directly to it. These are just little pieces of rope with little pieces of pipe on them to make simple pulls. I'm happy with it. It's great for plumbing stuff because, wow, it can add up fast. Especially if you're willing to branch out. Now, I know most everybody went to PEX, but my father-in-law is a plumber, so I couldn't do that to him. He'd be disgraced. So I have learned how to do, you know, hot sweat joints. And so, yeah, it's all copper. In case you haven't noticed, I also have like a thing for copper too. Everybody loves the simplicity of PEX, but the permanence, there's like a beauty in copper plumbing. I did a granite countertop, so there's still a cutoff here, and I did a marble surround on the backsplash, and so I still have cutoffs of marble everywhere too. That was quite a project. Here's the negative, the spandrel, I guess, of the backsplash. It goes up behind the kitchen sink. It turned out pretty well. It was a lot of work though. I had to actually plane this down because the thickness of this backsplash was thicker than the, what do you call it? I don't know what that's called, but the part on a countertop that goes up in the back against the wall, I guess that's also called the backsplash. That 4" or whatever it is backsplash went all the way around the countertop, but this one went higher behind the sink. So this is the real backsplash. All Carrara marble. This is the bigger half of the garage. You know, you're familiar with the shop, but this other part is much larger than the shop, but it's not really heated. Thankfully, the space is insulated, and so it doesn't stay warm exactly. It will if I open these doors and let some of the heat from the wood burner out. It will capture this heat. It will capture heat and stay warm enough. It never freezes in here. Those doors were a lovely addition. This was wide open when I bought the place, but I put this in, and both of these doors I got from the garbage. There was some guy nearby had them leaning up and it said free, and I went and thanked him and everything. They were a mess, but you know, they're peach trees. The glass was intact and they're all steel, so I was able to just do the woodworking and give them a paint job, and now they're, you know, some pretty sweet doors for a garage. I also, that sound is that rubber. There's rubber roofing. I cut into the bottom and put a thin single track of 1/8" rubber, and that it gives it friction. It's not so much to seal the space as it is to give it friction so that it doesn't swing in the breeze. It's not prone to blowing easily. You have to move these doors, and I wanted that deliberately. That way you can leave it halfway open and it takes a serious wind gust to move them. But even still, I put bumpers in. I think of everything, or at least I try to. Wood storage. What's the idea here? Okay, so again, there's a PVC chicken ladder here, and my studs are piled up on it. Keep them stacked nicely. That's actually not as nice as I would prefer, but good enough. In the back, 4x8 sheets, and I can pick them up and set them there and lean them on this really solid bucket shelf. as I'm sorting through them. So this system has been really nice. The one complaint that I have about it is that the ladder keeps ending up there in the way because it's access. But minus that minor inconvenience, the system has been nice. I keep my half sheets here, and it's just a simple matter of using either door to move material right around into the wood shop. The wood shop has gone through some, well, I don't want to say major changes. It's more fluid, it's organic, it's like a piece of living art, to be honest. It is endlessly changing, and I've kind of accepted that. You know, read your Marcus Aurelius. You just, the only thing that's certain is change. That's a relatively new addition to me. In the last year or two, I never really had one, but it's been lovely. I've done some things with it that, wow, I can't believe life was so imprecise before. I'll give you an example. My table saw fence broke. This was just yesterday. And so I had to drop everything and fix the table saw fence, because this is whatever project you're in the middle of. If your table saw breaks, you have just had a priority shift. I'll tell you about that table saw fix in just a moment, because it's kind of neat. But let me get this other white elephant out of the way. Or wait, no, not white elephant. A white elephant is a gift that you give to somebody that requires way too much maintenance, and so it's kind of, it's a liability gift. The elephant in the room is a different idiomatic expression. The elephant in the room is the big, glaringly obvious problem that nobody talks about. Okay, so don't mix your metaphors. I'm working on a swing, like a real swing. If you Google tire swing, all the DIY tire swings are awful. This is a really good design. This is not mine. This is technically my dad's design, but I'm sure he probably didn't invent it himself. It's probably as old as the hills, especially up here in Appalachia, as they call it. I still say Appalachia. If you don't like that, I don't care. I don't really identify with that culture anyways, which is why I'm here. I'm a recluse. Okay, so anyways, it's just a chunk of tire. You'll have to watch the video if you want the details of it, but it's kind of a surfer swing that you can get up on and ride, and that's what I love about it. Dad made one of these for us when we were kids, and it was just part of my childhood, and now, I guess mid-age crisis, I have a more adult swing, and I don't want that. I want this. This is still the most fun that you can have. It's the best version of a swing, and it's reliable. I don't think the one Dad made was quite so nice, so I took his design and gave it some of my own embellishments to make it, dare I say, better. Lovely fun thing, and that's what I'm in the middle of, is making a video for it. But, you know, you can go and watch this some other time. Let's talk about the fence fix, and then I'll cut you loose, because I have other things to do today, and so do you. You've probably heard the expression, youth is wasted on the young. My goodness, the older I get, the more that's true. What I mean is that when I was a kid, I took for granted having a swing like that. I didn't realize just how brilliant Dad's design was in its simplicity. And now, as an adult, the things that I took as commonplace in my childhood are far more precious. Another example of that is, I was raised in the woods, but the woods behind our house were old growth forest, like climax forest. with those big round trees that you can't wrap your arms around. And I just thought that's what the woods are. And, well, now I get these commenters that complain to me because I'm a conservationist. I'm a tree hugger, a green type. And I was a student of ecology. I'll get commenters often that say that they demand that forest in the United States is up. And yeah, that might be true to some extent, that we have fields of managed saplings to, replace what the lumber industry destroys. And so numerically, there might even be more trees at a given time. But the climax forest is gone. And you can look, the data is unambiguous. The statistics are there. We, over the course of 200 years, just eradicated old growth forest. There isn't any left. In fact, most of us haven't even seen it. And so now, but see, it doesn't just come back when the trees are full grown after 80 years. It takes thousands of years to replenish or restore old growth forests, because you have to understand that the selection pressures, the things that evolved trees, those pressures are over a long time scale. They're not over a short time scale. So the damage that you cause in a short-term catastrophe to forest takes a very, very, very long time to restore. Everything in life, causally, is sinusoidal. Anything that you do, it causes a reaction, and then there's a reaction to that reaction, and then it causes a sine wave of causes and reactions to those causes that take a long time to diminish. You can see it in politics when there's a movement on the left. You will see a corresponding inverse reaction on the political right, and then they just go back and forth in this tug of overcorrections. And it takes forever to fix this. Best not to tinker with complex systems at all. But of course that isn't the case. That isn't possible. But yeah, youth is wasted on the young, and all the things that seem common enough to us when we're young, we start to realize later that they're precious. And not everybody had a clever dad who would make an elegant but super fun swing design. And if you didn't have a swing like that, sorry about your luck. But I guess my dad averaged out in other ways. Okay, the fence. I had to fix it with time and resourcefulness because it's expensive to replace. Okay, so how the design works, in here, this lever thing is attached to a cam, and the cam tightens up against the side in here, and as it tightens up, this rod gets pulled this way. Okay, so just imagine that the rod gets pulled this way when tight. Okay, so the rod gets tight, and this little rubber thing clamps down on this rail, and the fence gets tight. That's great. And this part was inside, like this, and it's a piece of spring steel that broke right here at what any designer should know would be a weakness. It was designed to push out like this, and that way when you release, it would push the stopper out away so that friction was not being applied to the rail. Since this broke and this part was just totally not available, I had to do some cleverness to get this thing fixed. So let me show you what I did. The piece of spring steel was behind here, and I replaced that with a piece of metal that goes all the way up to where there's a screw that attaches into the rail. And threw that screw, or well, I kept the screw there, but what I did was I machined on the lathe a piece of brass. That's from an air fitting, you know, like an air hose fitting. And so now the screw still holds the piece of brass in tight, but the piece of metal I made is free to move back and forth on it. And that allowed me to add, on the inside here, a normal spring. I used a rotary tool to cut 2 little slots into the aluminum so that the spring would nest in there and it can't move. This screw here adjusts how tightly the fence grabs. So if you screw in on this nut, this plate will naturally be more inclined to grab the track tighter. Up here there's a penny, and the penny is just acting as a washer that prevents the brass from touching the aluminum. It was a bad move. I should have used steel because brass, or rather copper and aluminum, they don't go together well. They can cause corrosion, but it's not likely to happen anyways because there's no moisture here. But it can be, the fence can be loosened that way if you want, because it's super tight right now, because I made it nice and tight so it wouldn't move. But you can lift it up just barely if you really tug. But if you want, you can just press in on the lever and lift it this way. Here it is tightening. Tight, loose, tight. Good stuff, huh? I'm proud of it. Pretty good machining for a carpenter. Okay, that's enough rambling. I have work to do, and so do you. So apologies for not getting that sawhorse video done, but I'm working on it. I try to make videos for you. Even though there's not much incentive for me to do so, I have to admit. But you're the incentive. I enjoy talking to you, and for that reason, you know, be in contact with me. I don't know you exist if you don't converse with me, so feel free to exchange. I listen to what you say. Okay, see you around. Raz, say goodbye, or hello. Say hello. 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 Good enough.